to start off with Andrew Daly, Managing Director of MGI. He's going to walk us through their organization, what they do, and some of the insights that they're seeing. Take it away, Andrew.
Great. Thanks, Mike. And welcome, everyone. My name is Andrew Daly with MGI Research. And for those of you who may not know MGI, MGI is an independent research and advisory firm focused on disruptive trends in technology. We are known for our MGI 360 ratings and some of the kind of early and pioneering work that we've done over the last few years in the area of agile billing and more broadly in the space of what we call agile monetization platforms. So with that, just one moment to talk about a definition which we think is important, which is we talk about this notion of monetization, which we define as how efficiently and effectively market demand is created and then translated into revenue, profits, and competitive differentiation. And we think monetization is particularly important when thinking about the customer experience and creating a seamless customer experience, and then also operationally enabling that seamless experience while also doing all the nuts and bolts that are necessary from a billing and revenue accounting point of view. Monetization, our point of view, is not a product or a single process. It's really a business capability that every organization has that's supported by a set of tools, by professionals, and by a set of workflows and processes. So let's just take a moment to think about and look at kind of what are we seeing from a macro point of view. One is there's a fair amount of uncertainty out there. If you look at what's happening from a regulatory point of view, certainly there's some big changes coming out of Europe when you look at the regulation around PSD2 and the global data privacy regulations that are coming up, some changes in tax reporting in a number of countries. There's a real change that we've seen over the last, couple of years now in terms of changing customer journeys, and I'll talk about that in more detail. And there's also, in our practice, what we're seeing is a lot of relative uncertainty from a competitive landscape. And I think it was stated best by the CEO of one of our clients who said, 10 years ago we looked at our competition and it was a known number of players. We knew who they were. They know who we are. And it was a pretty simple game. And he said, today we look at our competition and there are companies coming out of nowhere that suddenly have created $50, $100 million, $500 million revenue lines coming after our business where we would have never thought of them as a competitor. So that's one piece of the puzzle, is this kind of uncertainty that we have. The other piece is that we're being asked to accelerate growth, accelerate profitability. There's a big push around taking advantage of cloud-based tools and technologies, as Mike mentioned at the opening, in terms of the digital capabilities that we have today. And there's a lot of pressure on organizations to deliver more growth and to deliver more profitability. And that ask is taking place at a time when, in most organizations, there's a fairly aging infrastructure. And the simple analogy I use is that if you had a Palm Pilot sitting on your desk, everyone would walk by and have a good laugh. But most organizations today, their processes and the technologies that are supporting those enterprise processes are pretty much the same vintage as that 1998 Palm 5 product. And yet we're trying to compete in the era of the iPhone, Tesla, and and all of these digital capabilities that are coming out. If we take a look at it through the lens of what does the customer want today and what has changed, you can really distill it into a single line, which is customers want agency. They want the ability and the freedom to act independently. And all the data, whether it's coming from us or from some of the other research shops, shows that even in a B2B context, customers are doing, and we as individuals are doing a lot of research and analysis on what we're looking to buy well before we ever talk to a sales representative, right? And all the data shows that it's 75% or more of the pre-sales effort is being done by our customers and prospects before we ever touch them. And similarly, customers want the ability to self-manage and self-provision, right? As I say, customers don't want to call us anymore, right? They want to be able to go online, go through their mobile device, and dial up a service, dial down a service. They basically want that same experience that we're getting in the Amazon, kind of subscribe and save, Amazon Prime mode. People want that in even the most complex B2B scenarios, right, which is the ability to be self-directed. And our expectation, similarly, as buyers, is that our suppliers are going to come to us with solutions rather than a sales pitch, right? I expect that my suppliers are going to show up understanding my business and understanding the challenge that I have in front of me, and I hope that they come with some ideas and solutions to address those.
Hey, Andrew, this is Mike. I think that's a great point. One of the things we hear a lot about is the, outcome-based model. It's kind of that solution-based and developing your interaction with your customer, developing your product with your customer based upon the outcome, not the product in and of itself. Are you seeing a similar thing?
Yeah, absolutely. But what we see is that the challenge in doing outcome-based pricing is that you first have to really have your arms around what is your price book and what is the governance around who owns the price book, right? And you need to be able to baseline your existing offers in the market. So you need to have some tools in place to begin to have the conversation around doing outcome-based pricing. From the executive suite, that's absolutely the trend. How do we go from selling a product to selling an outcome? Right? GE lighting, how do we go from selling a light bulb to we're going to sell you lighting as a service? Absolutely. And that kind of leads into, to be able to do something like outcome-based pricing, you need to address some of these symptoms that we see. We call these the 13 deadly sins of monetization. And we see a lot of, when we get called into organizations, see a lot of these things across companies across all sizes and all types of different industries. Whether that's...
Hey, Adam.
Yeah, go ahead.
Adam, I hate to put you on the spot. As you guys have gone through a large part of this transition, do these look familiar to you?
Most definitely. Probably about 8 or 9 of those right off the bat are very close to pain points that we've experienced or even continue to experience to some extent.
Yeah, and Mike, to the earlier comment, most people want to go to, say, a subscription or recurring or outcome-based pricing model, and yet are working in an infrastructure and an ERP environment where you've only got a one-time charge, right? And to change that takes a lot of time and a lot of money to be able to make any kind of changes in those environments. So it makes it difficult to be agile.
Yeah, and I think to your point on the other side, it seems like the customer, the clients out there, and we're all customers, even if we're providing solutions, they have more of a voice, they have more options, there's more opportunities, the switching cost is lower in a lot of cases. And so, as providers, we've got to be very competitive in our offering and very much think from that customer-centric point of view.
Yeah, I think it goes to your earlier comment that these new cloud-based capabilities, they're the great levelers, if you are, in that they give a very large organization the same agility and speed that a startup has, but also, conversely, these cloud-based tools give the startup the same kind of sophistication and very rich tools to compete against much larger companies. And so it makes it easier for competition, all around to intensify. Part of it is, we talk about this notion of an agile monetization platform. Part of it is we see billing as one element of 10 or 11 different areas. And often when we talk about improving a customer experience or digital transformation, we start to look kind of operationally at these areas to say, if these aren't automated or they're only semi-automated, obviously they need to take that step of full automation. And then the next step is to go from being automated but with a tool that may be out of date to looking at tools and capabilities across this platform that are cloud-based and much, much more agile, so that they're not only faster to install, but more importantly, they're faster to change, right? So that as the business changes, we can change in a time frame that's non-geological. And these are just some of the benchmarks that we've collected over time, and some of the areas where our clients kind of use this to look at and say, okay, where do we fit in terms of things like invoice accuracy, order accuracy, how long does it take to do the financial close, how long does it take to introduce new pricing or launch a new product, how long does it take to get from new product introduction to revenue. There's many benchmarks. These are just some that we wanted to share with everyone here online.
And I think these are really important because, I think each one of these you could potentially erode trust away from your clients. So there's, number one, they have a bad experience, but, if you don't have an accurate invoice, your clients you may have a great product, but if you can't deliver an accurate bill, once you've sold the product, that's the most common thing you're going to see face to face. So it seems like that would erode a lot of trust in the organization as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things when we talk about improving the customer experience, it's about improving transparency, right? And because transparency then yields more trust, right? And more trust yields a longer-term customer relationship, right? And so, again, it goes back to, we look at our lives online, that B2C experience where we want transparency, that's coming to the B2B world, right? And I'm expecting to have that same frictionless experience in complex business scenarios that you can find in the business, in the B2C world. And ultimately, like you said, Mike, these things all drive both top line results, right? Where I can drive more revenue, both out of existing customers and new ones, but also the bottom line when you can fix things like revenue leakage, right? When you eliminate that and you can put 2, 3, 4 points to the bottom line, that's a tangible result, right? That's an earnings surprise to the upside, and that's what people are looking for. So with that, those are the end of my remarks. Let me hand it over to Adam.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. And Adam is going to jump in and kind of give us some real-world examples of what's going on. Thanks, Andrew.
Sure. So Mike had said, my name is Adam Rogowskis. I am the CFO of EdgeNet. I will give you a little background about who we are, the problem we solve, and ultimately why we need to transform our business model for multiple reasons, and kind of how we got to starting with the billing system and this theme of monetization as I go through the presentation here. So a little bit about EdgeNet. We are a premier provider of product content management and configuration solutions for retailers, manufacturers, distributors, and e-tailers, from Fortune 50 retailers to small businesses. More than 8,000 brands trust EdgeNet to help simplify item setup, manage their product data, product content, create efficiencies on how to syndicate that content, and ultimately how to get their products to market faster, cheaper, better. And EdgeNet is based in Nashville. So I won't go into the full history here, but EdgeNet has a pretty storied past, founded all the way back in 1990 as the original ISP in the Middle Tennessee area. It has over 15 years of digital experience and product content specific experience. And as being there from the start, we've seen the kind of the evolution of the digital aspect of buying and selling products with the advent of eBay, Amazon, all the way to more the direct to consumers and drop ship and Amazon Prime. And we've kind of evolved with that whole evolution of this digital commerce journey. And just a couple points about this, and it might not be too shocking to most people, but in today's world, the reason that why EdgeNet's been one of the reasons EdgeNet's been growing is because of the way shoppers shop today. 80% of consumers research products before entering a store. 82% of shoppers consult their smartphones while in store. And 51% of shoppers purchase from a brand other than what they intended to purchase because of the product content. So if you think about any time you go on a website or on your phone to buy something, the marketing materials and the pricing is important, but ultimately you need the information to know what you're buying, and that's where EdgeNet comes into play. And from a couple of the pain points that we help solve is, so from a retailer standpoint, if you think about it, and you have thousands of vendors, you have hundreds of thousands of SKUs, if not millions of products, and thousands of attributes for all these products that change each week, each day, each hour. It's a very complex and difficult situation to manage. And then on the flip side, on the suppliers, for manufacturers, it's difficult when you have lack of tools, you have a lack of standardization, you have a need for centralizing your data and your workflows, and you need the ability to be able to syndicate all that content for what you're manufacturing out to the folks that ultimately need to buy your products. And that's where EdgeNet comes in, providing that platform for both retailers and suppliers to manage and harness and send out all this data. And from a graphic here, just to kind of illustrate this complex world, in terms on the left side, you have all your data inputs for any type of product content that you need to get out into the marketplace. You have through EdgeNet in that circle there, you have the ability to categorize all this data, customize it and complete it, and then ultimately control where it's sent. So in the advent of e-com and digital sales, a manufacturer needs to send this data to exponentially more recipients than, say, 15, 20 years ago. And as a kind of a logistical example here, on the left would be a brand, is selling a power drill before using a tool like EdgeNet to manage all the complex data. So if you think about if you're a contractor and you want to buy a power drill, you probably care less about the color than you do about the intricate details of the product in terms of voltage, the weight, the battery charge, accessories, what the material makeup of the product, and then also the multiple of images to kind of click through and see if that's what you actually would like to buy. A big issue for retailers especially is product returns, and multiple studies have shown that a big reason for product returns is the consumer buying something and not receiving what they bought, or not having the right information when they purchased the item in the first place, leading to a return of the product and a cost for the supplier, the manufacturer, the retailer.
Hey Adam, this is Mike. You guys have a wonderful product, and just kind of thinking back about some of the things that Andrew was talking about in terms of kind of the solution, coming to your clients with a solution, and then we talked about outcome-based selling. Do you see that as you go to market with your solution? It seems like there's a lot of elements to bringing together this very rich customer experience.
Yeah, most definitely, and it's one of the pain points that we had that I'll get into here is that for us to offer what our customers actually needed and to develop further products and sell them to the market, is we just needed to transform the business and how we could do that, and able to be more customer focused, more customer success driven, and really listen to the market and move in those directions to launch products. And I clicked on the next slide here and come to that point. With the explosive growth of e-com, partially leading to the success of where EdgeNet comes in, and that's where with growth there always comes pain. Growing's not easy. I think anyone would attest to that. And from a scale standpoint, we have 5x the number of customers we had just a couple of years ago. From a flexibility standpoint, as we're launching new softwares and features, we need that ability to build out different price points and the ability to go to market with a sense of urgency, with some speed, in a technological space where sometimes it's a land grab and sometimes first to market wins. And ultimately, as our customer base grows, we need a way to streamline our back office operations and our touch points with the customer, and ultimately kind of a system integrated approach to the customer. And with that, we're looking internally and doing our analysis. Where do you even start to try to transform your business that's on legacy systems or homegrown operations? And ultimately, we came back to our when we did the cost-benefit analysis, and it pointed all back to our billing system for a few different reasons. One, our homegrown system that we had built was quite sophisticated, but could not always be trusted. So fully automation wasn't a capability. From a CRM standpoint, specifically our Salesforce.com needed to tie in to our ERP. We needed our data, our teams and our data to be communicating seamlessly, so the business is talking the same language. And from a resource standpoint, it's a simple question of where do you want your developers to spend their time? Do you want to be using up resources to build in-house technology, or do you want to build products that we specialize in to go to market? So from there, that question was a simple one to answer for us, and we didn't want to recode a homegrown system and spend the resources to do that. So when doing all that analysis and kind of looking at a couple different players in the space, ultimately we went with GoTransverse to help us on this journey, for a couple of different reasons, but the ability to plug into Salesforce was a big one. Having a reliability and a flexible aspect in order to scale our products, go to market quickly was a huge driver in our decision, and just the need for sophistication in how we were operating the business and how we wanted to operate going forward, and ultimately led to the partnership with GoTransverse, and now that we've made that decision about a little more than a year ago today. And so with the implementation, now when we look at our organization as we're developing new products and new features and updating not only our external facing products for the customers, but internally as well, our customers receive upgraded new solutions. We were able to dedicate the resources to provide new products and features. We launched a new product earlier this year that wouldn't have been possible if we didn't have the resources to do so. We have new pricing options in order to satisfy different segments of our customer base. When you're talking about working with manufacturers and multi-billion-dollar retailers, there's going to be different solutions and pricing options needed to provide the value to these customers. And Mike had mentioned something about trust in there too. So, we need to ensure that our customers are getting billed accurately and timely, and to keep that trust with our customers. So on one hand, you need to provide a software that they can rely on. On the other hand, you need to make sure that they trust the back office, trust you and what you're billing them, and that they're receiving what they should from a contractual standpoint. And this required some of the real-time system integration and some automated access points, and that kind of ties into the integrated service experience for customers. So now when they call us up for support or anything of that nature, we have a way that our product can be synced up with our billing, and our billing can be synced up with our CRM. So now interactions are more centralized. And ultimately, when you're picking up the phone, you're not starting from scratch trying to understand what a customer's point of view, and you can tie a lot of things together before you even get on the phone. So by addressing the scalability and flexibility needs that we had, we naturally able to provide this focus for the customer. And now we're in a much better position than a year ago to scale even more rapidly with the changing environment that we're in, and I think overall we would be we're in a much better place than prior to this whole integration and experience.
Hey Adam, so I have a question here on the implementation, and rough order of magnitude, how long did the implementation take? And what should a company be prepared, resource-wise and time-wise in taking on a project like this?
Sure. So I think with any type of system integration, it's going to be somewhat tailored to the business needs. Overall, from a resource standpoint, we brought in a part-time project manager on our end, just to make sure that kind of directing the project, making sure things were being done internally when they need to be done. I think from an implementation standpoint, we had the GoTransverse folks and their partners did a really good job of mapping out how the workflows of all the work that needed to be done. And I think we went live within 2 to 3 months, if I recall correctly. And that's with my team and myself kind of keeping our day jobs and going through month-end closes and all the other good finance stuff that you do, regardless of an integration.
Yeah, I think that's common for everybody. They got to take this on in addition to their full-time jobs. Got another question for you.
But on that point, it also, the amount of the reduction of manual workload on the back end of this project, I think that was incentive enough for folks to want to work a little harder to get it done.
Excellent. We all like to make our lives a little bit easier in the long run. Hey, another question, but there's a question about from Mark asking about the volumes that you're speaking of when you speak of scalability, and probably I'm going to embellish his question a little bit. What is there a tipping point at some point from a scaling perspective where you say, hey, I've got to make this move?
Definitely a tipping point in terms of when you're starting to spend your resources on fixing something that's broken versus applying to future value add. I mentioned earlier when our customer growth was starting to, I think about 5x from just 3 years ago, and a big bulk of that came in the last 18 months. You start feeling pain pretty quickly if something's not working correctly, and those little things add up until finally you just take a step back and say, how do we attack this systematically, and make sure that we are not only focused on our customers and providing the proper tools for them to be successful, but then also looking at it for ourselves in terms of monetization and understanding that, hey, if we're going to launch a new product in, let's say, 6 months, how is this all going to be supported on the back end, and in a new thinking of a price point and new thinking of flexibility on that standpoint. So that kind of pushes you over the edge as well to make a decision.
Excellent. Okay, so just to summarize, sounds like the scalability is really around the operational supporting of the previous system, and that it required a lot of manual intervention, and you would have to hire more and more people, and just time-wise, you couldn't get everything processed in time to be able to launch these new products. Is that a correct summary?
Correct. Yeah, and it's less about adding more headcount and more about allowing the headcount we have to focus on value adds for the business.
Okay, great. So there's another follow-on that's kind of in this same line, and there's a question about how the pricing billing worked prior to implementation for a single customer and how it now works. Before,
there was a lot more work needed on the customer's end, and if there was any type of price change needed for a customer or any kind of discount that needed to be applied, there was a whole process of providing authenticated coupon codes and dealing with issues like that versus just having a salesperson on the phone and here's your standard list price, and if you're using some features or some other ones, they can adjust that as needed, and we can build in approval points and almost have a sales ops desk to manage that. And without a kind of standardized price book and a way to build that in through the CRM, which ties then to your billing system, it was impossible. And so now it's a little bit more of like we operate much more like a standard sales operation versus before you're relying on the customer and going through click-through document and agreements and choosing choosing their pricing options based on what was online, and ultimately, and it might not even need to be on the phone with a salesperson, but they might not fully understand what the offering is without having that conversation. So at least now we have a little bit more of it's a little more manageable and a little more ability to influence the decision of the consumer as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. Okay, so we're to the questions now. We've got one here for Andrew. Andrew, there's a question here about, are you seeing anything in the industry that is a sign that is usually the main indicator that would push an organization to explore beginning the journey of this change?
Well, I think it's Adam hit on this, which resonates because we see it all the time, which is typically when there's enough internal friction where resources being allocated to fixing problems, right, versus problems that are coming from the existing processes or the existing system versus the ability to allocate resource to solving new challenges, that becomes, one of the tipping points, right? So when you're allocating additional manual labor at the month end or at the quarter end, right, to do manual billing and to do the calculations because so many contracts are outside of the core system or core process, that's one of the indicators, right? When you have sales reps that after the sale are spending a lot of time helping to get the customer onboarded and helping them to understand, what they can buy and what they can't, right? There's too much friction, right? Salespeople should be selling, not, doing post-sale support. So usually it's that type of friction, right? When you're trying to launch products in a matter of weeks because the competition is able to do that and it takes you months, right? That's friction and an indicator that maybe you need to do something. Those are some of the kind of common symptoms we see.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. Got one more question for you, and this question is about revenue leakage. And, I think this is something that everybody is concerned about. The question is there an industry standard / benchmark people should avoid from a revenue linkage? I guess anything greater than 0 may be one answer, but it's probably going to be a little bit there, huh?
Well, I think, it's funny because one CFO put it to me. She said, fixing revenue leakage is like the best thing ever because if I can put 1 point to the bottom line and I don't have to push the sales folks any harder and I don't have to push on the product folks any harder, right? That's like free money, as she put it, right? The typical benchmark, most organizations have somewhere between 2 to 5% revenue leakage. So, that's a fair amount, right? And when you look at kind of what's an acceptable amount, if you want to put it that way, somewhere around 1% maybe, right? Anything above that is probably such, given the economics of a given business, if you've got more than 1 to 2% revenue leakage, you can cost justify an investment in monetization solutions that are going to yield a whole host of benefits, but you can just justify it off of fixing that revenue leakage problem.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, particularly the comment from the CFO of, boy, if I don't have to go R&D, I don't have to build a new product, I don't have to take a new product to market. all I've got to do is just tighten some of the screws and, tighten things up on some of my processes. Kind of along those lines, one of the things we see as well are clients that are taking existing products and just changing the way they're bringing them to market. So repackaging and repricing them kind of in this outcome-based model with a combination of subscription and consumption as another model to drive revenue without having to build new product. Obviously you want to continue to innovate, but there's also ways to innovate on the business model side.
Yeah, absolutely. If we have time, Mike, I have one question for Adam.
Yeah.
Which is, what was the kind of biggest positive upside surprise that you've experienced, that EdgeNet has experienced coming out of this process?
I would say that the sales team is happy. A lot of these back office decisions and things like that you make regardless of Salesforce, because I've learned that if you allow if you're relying on training of a salesperson to do the right thing, it's never going to happen. You just almost have to force the behavior of the correct behavior to happen and prevent any behaviors you don't want from not happening. But ultimately, when we rolled this new process out, which again tied into the Salesforce operations, they were ecstatic. And for me, I thought we would have got a little more pushback from their standpoint, but it's making their lives a lot easier, which for sales and software organization, making the lives of the salespeople and the developers easier is a big win all across the board.
Yeah, so it sounds like the benefits weren't just in the back office, but across the business. It wasn't just a finance project.
Yeah, of course, definitely.
Yeah, neat.
Hey, so another question for Adam, and I know you touched upon this a little bit in the presentation, but there's a person here is looking for a little bit more insight into how you got the project prioritized. So you said you looked across at, basically these symptoms that were causing problems, but looking at the core, you wound up figuring out that, hey, this is really billing at the end of the day. I think there's a lot of folks get questions about there's always competing needs within an organization, and is there any insights that you can provide in terms of key metrics and what you evaluated and how you prioritized it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's other things that you could focus on from the ERP, through the CRM standpoint and everything from quote to cash and all that. But at the end of the day, if we wanted to change our price or launch a new product, we would have to come up with a delivery mechanism to allow us the flexibility to do that and to do that at scale. So regardless of if something else might have been a better approach, to me this was first and foremost, again, as a sales and software organization, if you can't sell the new product in a scalable way, if we had to manually enter orders and manually invoice and have a system that didn't tie to our ERP, it just adds way too much guesswork and complexity, and that's when you really start talking about headcount and not to mention an audit or nightmare for an audit. So at the end of the day, just to launch a new product was the tipping, I guess to the earlier question, the tipping point to really get moving on it. I guess that not only did it streamline our current operations, but that was kind of the next phase of where we saw the business going and the growth going, and had to address ASAP.
Excellent. Well, I think we're running towards the end of our time here. I'd like to thank